Legacy Builders, strategies for building successful family enterprises. Brought to you by Beacon Family Office at Asante Financial Management Limited. I'm your host, Cory Gagnon, and on this show, we explore global ideas, concepts, and models that help family enterprises better navigate the complexities of family wealth. Let's dive right in and start learning how to take control of your wealth and realize the lasting legacy you're intentionally working towards. Together, we're building legacies. Today, I'm excited to introduce our esteemed guest who will provide further insights into the exciting intersection of succession planning and family enterprise. My goal is to be the most curious person in today's conversation with Trudy Pelletier. Trudy is a communications specialist and governance expert with 14 years experience in private and family enterprise. She empowers leaders to resolve conflicts, navigate complexity, and build governance in family, business, and ownership systems to fulfill their biggest dreams. She holds designations in Family Enterprise Advisor, Certified Exit Planning Advisor, Certified Executive Coach, and Mediator. Welcome, Trudy. We're thrilled to have you here today to share your wealth of knowledge and experience in this fascinating realm. Let's dive in, shall we?
Great. Thank you, Cory.
Now, Trudy, imagine you're delivering a commencement speech to a graduating class, and you have a chance to inspire them with your story. How would you begin your speech to convey the incredible lessons and expertise you've gained along your career?
I would start with a defining moment that I had when I was 8 years old. And I was in small town Saskatchewan, which is where I grew up. And I was talking to an influential woman in our community with my sister Diane. And, it was a trauma. And I was telling her what happened, except it was a lie. And as an 8-year-old, I was expecting her to say, it'll be okay. Things will work out. And she said nothing. And it was several years later when I discovered that defining moment had shaped and formed my entire career. Because what I thought as that 8-year-old is when I grow up, I'm going to help people talk better. And today I have the privilege of doing that. And I didn't remember that defining moment. It was an invisible decision, a forgotten decision, until I went about 25 years ago to a workshop to discover my purpose in life, and they took us through those defining moments. And as human beings, we all have those defining moments. So I would invite the graduating class to remember that life really is sourced by the invisible, the pervasive, that we have as children, small traumas, big traumas, victories, and it shapes and colors our life. So to take a walk on the inside and to live life on purpose, to master oneself and regulate.
Awesome. And Trudy, when you said help people talk better, what does that mean to you?
Well, I facilitate difficult conversations. That is my specialty. And the word facilitate means make easy. Okay. So yesterday I was talking to a family member. I'm not yet engaged. We've been exploring working together. And he was explaining that the patriarch is very conflict adverse. He doesn't like difficult conversations. And I said, nobody likes difficult conversations. And when we take them on with purpose, positive intent, compassion, and acceptance, it actually elevates our respect and connection.
Yes.
And so, helping people talk better, I make easy the difficult conversations. And most families who are up to stewarding wealth, transitioning an operating business, creating purpose for their wealth, must have difficult conversations because most families don't like to talk about money, as one example.
Yes. And in those conversations, specifically in your intro, I mentioned the word governance. Where does that fit into these conversations that they must have?
Well, corporate governance is a well accepted in public and private enterprise, right?
Yes.
Structure. Ownership governance, unanimous shareholders agreements, buyout plans, all of that is a form of governance. The least cared for system is the family system. And here's the thing, every family requires governance. When I was raising my kids, who are now adults, but when I was raising them, I considered governance as discipline and responsibility. So families who have much at stake really create a new future and a better ratio of beating the odds when they formalize their governance, have a shared family vision and mission, a shared purpose for wealth, core values, defining success, having a shared success statement. Those are some of the elements of governance that I help families build and design. And it's an inside-out job.
So from a difficult conversation, you mentioned this person that you were having a conversation with, and mentioned that the patriarch doesn't like difficult conversations. I can imagine people who've been embedded in habits through their life, resist a little bit more. Tell me just on the get started with some of those families where maybe there is that resistance from key family members.
Well, resistance is pervasive for human beings. We wake up Monday morning and we wish it was Friday or Saturday. It's not only difficult conversations we're resisting. We actually resist people because in the background, we want them to be different than what they are. Or we don't like that they're this way or that way. And so resistance is pervasive. That's not a problem. One of the requirements that I tell families, it does not matter what space you are in, as long as you're willing to be in communication. So I can deal with resistance. I can deal with any level of emotion and cause a breakthrough. And if they take themselves out of communication, then no difference can be made. And when people are upset, that is often brain-driven behavior, is to turn away and not be in communication.
Yes. Now, you mentioned, I want to go back to the comment you made about when the stakes are high. What sort of stakes have you experienced? What situations might resonate with our listeners?
Well, family relationships, love and affinity. Most people don't have the experience of love and affinity being present in communication. And I have not ever met a family that does not love each other. It's just that it's often below, some family history that has not been resolved. And when I say resolved, I don't mean agreed upon. I mean that there's been the freedom to share each other's experience authentically and have that be gotten, have that being heard, seen, and understood in a way that leaves nothing left unsaid. That's part of what resolved means. And people collapse experiences and language. And also one of the challenges in communication is, on average, words have 25 different meanings. So what respect is to you, Cory, may not be what respect is to a colleague or to your brother or your father or your mother. And slowing down to really understand what people mean by the language that they're using is part of what I do in the work that I do. And I also want to clarify what governance is. I think that's an overused and often misunderstood word.
Yes.
So governance, the purpose of governance is to increase and build alignment, improve communication so that better decisions are made.
I love that. Increase and build alignment. And within that alignment and family enterprises where the stakes are high and some of these conversations haven't been had, what would you say is the typical first step? Or, you mentioned the conversation with one of the children, I believe is what you mentioned.
Yes, this was the second generation.
Okay. So Gen 2 is coming in, the rising generation, and there's something that they're feeling. Can you explain the way that those conversations begin from one family member that probably would that be typical, or would there be the group coming to you because they've identified an issue?
So it often comes to me through referrals, although families find me themselves. It is often generated by one family member. And the first step is to, meet the family and get a sense as to what they want and need, and get a sense as to whether or not I'm the right fit. I do not assume that I'm the right fit. I was introduced to a new family about 2.5 months ago, and I went to have an hour meeting with the daughter and the mother, the matriarch. And I spent 3.5 hours with them that afternoon because that is what was wanted and needed in terms of them relieving some of the stress that the dynamics are causing them. And it's being driven by a health issue and a health concern. So that adds to the tension.
Right.
So, it's not uncommon that one person brings me in. But before I do anything, I meet the family. And sometimes that includes spouses, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's, getting the multiple perspectives. I also then have an opportunity to observe how they talk over each other, how much they listen, or probably what's better said, don't listen to each other, and get a sense as to the dynamics. Again, because I am committed to making a sustainable difference, and that is not about pushing rope.
Right.
So there's got to be an appetite.
Yes.
Not an appetite for governance, an appetite to, live into a future of alignment and harmony and well-being. My work doesn't leave people never in upset, never dealing with breakdown. My work leaves them equipped to deal with it faster and productively.
Right.
In a way that doesn't build resentment. How do we deliver the tough messages in a palatable way?
Absolutely. And you mentioned the, defining what governance is, and that, typically within that ownership side of things, there's key documents that those technical advisors have put in place or, suggested. When it comes to family governance and these tough conversations, where do you find the work's been done, or the awareness lacks within that?
Well, every family has history, and it plays out. So part of it is understanding, what do the individual stakeholders, family members want? And then looking for the common ground and getting them present to the common ground. Because most people are familiar with what they don't want rather than what they do want.
Right.
And so that's part of it, is, creating some personal visions. And I have a variety of ways in which I do that. And then we start to explore what the individual family members have in common. And that's one process to begin to create that family vision mission. I had a family create a family vision for 5 generations out.
Wow.
Now, people's first reaction might be, well, that's ridiculous. And let's just pause for a moment and say, so this family said every key decision that they were going to make in family, business, and ownership, they were going to pause and imagine 5 generations out and try to imagine the implications of that. I don't know. I think that gives families big problems worthy of their time and energy and conversation.
Yes. And that really is stewardship.
Yes.
At its finest, right there.
Absolutely. At its finest. And people don't connect family governance as a risk management tool. And it is. When you look at, as a financial advisor, you look at your ethics. One element of your ethics is to manage risk. And when family dynamics, and it's predictable, you can look at present day dynamics and circumstances, and there is a predictable trajectory that family is on. And, I'm speaking more and more about this, that family governance is a risk management tool, and it's often the missing leg. We've got corporate governance, we've got ownership governance, and we've got ethics that guide, the work that professionals do. And then there's family governance. And, statistics show it's the least cared for system.
Yeah. And you commented on ethics, which to me is very similar to when you talked about the shared vision, mission, and values. Can you go a little bit deeper in what that shared mission, you talked about the 5 generations, that's very aspirational vision and mission in that family. How about from a values perspective? People tend to understand the individual values and the shared values within the family structure?
No, and rarely do people think about it. And rarely do people take the time to articulate and define their values. It's one of the first things that I have families do. And I can tell you that I was working with a family in Edmonton last year, and there had been a fracture in the family since the late 90s. And the generation before, 2 brothers who were in business, their wives at some point stopped speaking to each other. So this is now a generational pattern that is forming. And they went through a very thoughtful and reflective values exercise. This is not what are your values, and we take the first thing, that comes to from our brain. It's thoughtful, it's reflective, it is done individually, and then it's done between husband and wife, and then it's done collectively in the family. And in this family, there were 16 family members in the room, 3 family branches. They were astonished that despite the fracture or divide, their shared values, it becomes the foundation of every decision going forward.
And as you mentioned, people are programmed to look at the differences, and you help them see what was in common.
Mm-hmm. And people use different words to describe the same thing. So part of the discovering that common ground is looking at the language, like what does compassion mean to you? Or what does acceptance mean? And it's very easy then to start to theme values together such that these 16 family members from 3 family branches can land on 7 values. I work with 7 inside of their 7 days in the week. And we can, families can choose 1 value each day of the week and talk about it and use it in their language and be really on purpose with that value. And it's a way to cultivate accountability around having family members honor what they say is most important.
Absolutely. And let's go back to risk management. And you just told the story of 30 years of divide within that family. There's a lot at stake there, and embedding that into those next generations. What do we see when businesses don't have that and families don't have those structures in place? Had they foreseen where they were going based on the trend that had been developed?
No, it was other advisors that in this particular case, brought me to the table. I can tell you the 2nd generation family member that I spoke to yesterday said that there's a divide in that 1st generation and they're not taking action, and that's a source of frustration. I'm working with another family where the 2nd generation is in litigation and has been for several years. And so the 3rd generation brought me in to avoid that. And, so what do I see? I see families who love each other and have limited capacity to experience that and express that and have that be present for the worries, concerns, and family history playing out.
Absolutely. And do you find that sometimes your work, as a mediator, you need to go in with that hat on? You made mention of litigation, and I'm sure there's that generation that's been fighting for a while, had many different professionals come in and work with them. Do you find that at points that mediator hat needs to be there first?
Well, I don't separate the hats that way. And I would say my primary hat, I have two. So I have a coach approach style. So if you don't want to be developed and personally and collectively growing through the process, I'm not the right person to work with you. And I'm a communication specialist. So I have a bias. I tell everybody, Cory, my bias. And my bias is communication can resolve anything. The problem is most people stop talking and they carry that conversation around in their head, consuming time and energy and space, affecting that person's well-being, peace, quality of life. Or they turn to someone and they vent and complain, and it creates a divide. So there isn't anything that can't be resolved in communication from where I sit. And sometimes, often, most times, they get to discover how big of a human being they are by being in communication. So I can tell you at the last family meeting at the end of June with this family, I modeled how a conversation could go between that second generation patriarch and that second generation sibling to resolve not the litigation, but the broken hearts. And we're exploring taking that on this fall. Now, we don't know if that sibling is going to be willing to have that conversation. And it removes the blame, it removes the fault, it removes the resentment. And that second generation patriarch that I'm working with is dealing with his broken heart first before he can go and have that conversation with that sibling. And it's all possible. Now, that's privileged work that I get to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to see the possibility when others may not is a gift to those families.
Yeah. And I'm standing for something, right? I'm standing for them to transform whatever must be transformed. And in order for them to have what they want, which in my experience is people want to be loved and understood and accepted for who they are and accepted for who they are not and appreciated. And life's hurts and, small traumas, big traumas get in the way of that.
Absolutely. And if we go back to success, people define success in a different way. And you made mention of success statements. How do those benefit the families? And in what way do they benefit them?
Well, one, it builds understanding, right? When we can have, 8 or 10, 12 family members sharing what individual success means to them, how they measure it externally as well as intrinsically. And then again, we're looking for common ground to create a family success statement. That's actually easy part. Creating family governance in my work is the easy part. It's cultivating the accountability. Are we honoring our values? Are we interacting with each other in a way that is aligned with our purpose, our mission, who we say we're becoming as a family in our vision? And for human beings, there's a body of work out there called the veil of invisibility. There's 11 ways in which you and I as human beings don't see how what we say matters to us the most is our actions are incongruent with. And, I help people discover that and coach them in and around that, and not from a place of bad and wrong, from a place of we get gripped by our humanity and we step away and we don't act congruently with our values. Not a problem. I call it in my work a mud pie. And I give them conversation tools and structures to go and clean up the mud pies faster, quicker, rather than carrying it around for a week, a month, a year, and in some instances, 34 years.
Wow. That mud pie, and you made comment of what they say and their actions. Going back, that 8-year-old girl, what do you think from today that person that you looked up to could have said to you from that perspective?
Well, I wanted her to tell me that we were going to be okay. And for years, I actually resented her, saying nothing. And then in 2008, I believe, I was in Houston under the training of Dr. DeMartini. And his work is about looking for the other side that we don't typically see. So I was hurt. There was resentment. And despite discovering that this, communication was the common thread in all of my career, I still had this resentment. And through his process in Houston, I discovered that maybe the safest thing she could have done for us was say nothing. And in that moment, all that resentment that I had dissolved because I really let myself see the other side. So life is always a balance. There's an upside, a downside, and another side. And when we build the muscle to be looking for that, we actually, one, discover the giant within ourselves, because it is easy to hang on to resentment. I share with people, lots of family members have bags of mud pies that they're carrying around. And I get to go and help them clean that up, coach them with the tools and distinctions. And their courage is inspiring because they're doing that. They're the ones being in communication.
Right.
So best thing she could have done is what she did. I am doing what I've been put on the planet to do, sourced by that experience. And, maybe you've gotten, I had a pretty volatile childhood, and everything that happened, I'm resolved with, I'm complete with, I'm at peace with. My parents know that I'm grateful for how it was and how it wasn't, and who they were and who they weren't. And that gives me the opportunity to be the space for anything that a family is dealing with that can be resolved in communication.
Absolutely. Yeah. And an amazing thing to be able to bring to a family, or, things that you're not bringing into a family, because as you call it, the mud pie, they've all got something that's there that maybe they haven't identified, and those experiences that you get to come in and help them work through.
Yeah, and I go first. Effective communication is a now phenomenon. It's not a destination. I make my own mud pies. I'm not perfect. And it's like cleaning it up, being responsible, being in communication sooner than later to resolve. Most human beings, I've never met a human being who wakes up to upset someone or hurt someone. So often in family life, it's unintended consequences. We have unintended impact on each other. And being able to have someone say, hey, what you did or what you said or how you said it hurt me. And me being able to get that without defending it, which is brain-driven behavior, without reacting to it, brain-driven behavior, then we become closer. We create being understood and understanding the other. And so love and affinity is present as a result.
That's great. Now, Trudy, as we come to the end of our conversation today, before we wrap up the episode, there's a few questions that I ask each guest. Are you ready for the tough ones?
Sure, absolutely.
All
Love
right.
it. Bring it on.
All right. What is one key strategy you believe is the most essential for building a successful family enterprise?
Communication. At the heart of failure, at the heart of success is communication.
Great. Love that one.
Now, that's not a strategy.
Yes.
Except when you think about brain-driven behavior has us turn away from each other. So it actually takes something to turn towards someone and authentically share, especially when there's been some kind of mud pie hurt that was created. So that's the strategy. Be willing to be in communication and take what you get.
Yes. Yes. Now, what is the most common challenge that you see family enterprises encountering when it comes to wealth transition and generational continuity?
Listening. We tend to listen to people through who we have them as, which is our filters, our perception, our lens based on our past experience. And when we listen through those filters, we actually miss the person. So I would say that if you can take on listening newly, giving up that I know who my dad is, I know who my brother is, and we're so righteous about who we have people as, that when you can put aside that righteousness and even present some of those listening filters. I remember being brought into a family, the second son was the assumed successor. And in discovery that another facilitator did, 3 family members, 3 of 7 said they were going to leave the family business if he became successor because he's a bully. Well, guess what? If you're listening to him as bully, he will be that because your brain fights to be right about however you have it.
Right.
So listening.
And can you share, is there any strategy to overcome some of those biases and stories that are there?
Well, we don't overcome it, Cory. We get responsible for it. Now, most people avoid being responsible because we collapse it with fault and blame. But if I am willing to be responsible, that I listen my brother as a bully, or personal story, what's default for me, I listen my dad as the bad guy. And when I am interacting and experiencing him through that filter, guess what? He is that. If I can be responsible that I made that up and park that, which is part of what I help families do, build the muscles to suspend those default patterns, ways of listening, ways of being, then I'm free to be present to who that person is for me right now.
That's great. That be responsible. That's absolutely. And in your experience, what are the top 3 qualities that a successful family enterprise leader possesses?
Purpose, acceptance. And we tend to think of acceptance as one dimension. So I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I accept you for who you are and who you are not. And inside of the accepting who you are not, I actually give up what's in the background that I wish that you were. That's true of circumstances. I accept the circumstances of what is and what isn't. And curiosity. Our brain walks around knowing, I know what they're going to say, I know what they're going to do, I know how this is going to go. And it actually is a barrier in communication. So being curious, being open, it's a deliberate human on purpose act. We don't walk around that way. We actually have to put something aside, have our brain relax so that we can be curious. And inside of being curious, we're asking questions, listening to understand rather than listening to respond, listening on purpose, suspending our judgments. So those would be the three that I would say.
Great. Purpose, acceptance, and curiosity. Great ones. Before we wrap up today's conversation, I want to make sure that we've covered everything. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
Wow. There are many pathways, to creating governance for unity and harmony and successful wealth transition. There's no one right pathway. Do the personal work. Be interested and curious in your family members and share.
I love that. Thank you, Trudy. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your expertise and experiences with us today. Your insights have been incredibly valuable. I'm personally grateful.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Today, we had the privilege of diving deep into the world of family enterprise with Trudy Pelletier. I hope you found this conversation as enlightening and valuable as I did. Throughout our discussion, Trudy shared incredible insights and strategies for building successful family enterprises and leaving a lasting legacy. We delved into family governance as a valuable risk management tool, highlighted the advantages of a shared family vision, and emphasized the crucial role of cultivating accountability in family enterprise development. It's these valuable insights that can truly make a difference in your own journey of legacy building. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Trudy for generously sharing her time, expertise, and knowledge with us. Her expertise in communication and governance brings a unique perspective to our exploration of family enterprises. Trudy's insights have provided us with actionable strategies to take control of our wealth and build a lasting legacy. If you'd like to learn more about Trudy and her services, you can find more at trudypelletier.com or connect with her on LinkedIn. We've put the links to both in the show notes. I highly encourage you to connect with Trudy to explore her expertise and how it could support your family enterprise on its path to success. Thank you for joining me, Cory Gagnon, your host of Legacy Builders Podcast. It's my personal passion to explore with you these topics related to family wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred podcast platform. And don't forget to share this episode with family, friends, and colleagues who you care about. If you'd like to help support this show, you can do so by leaving a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything shared on today's episode, or have topics you'd like us to dive deeper into in future episodes, please let us know by emailing beaconfamilyoffice@asante.com. That's beaconfamilyoffice@ASSANTE.com. Legacy Builders, Strategies for Building Successful Family Enterprises is brought to you by Beacon Family Office at Asante. Are you worried about losing what you've created and seeking ways to transition your wealth across generations? Beacon Family Office at Asante supports our clients transition their wealth while maintaining relationships. If you'd like to access more content we've created, you can visit us at beaconfamilyoffice.com or for more details on our services and book an initial call. Thanks again for listening, and until next episode, stay intentional about building your legacy. This program was prepared by Cory Gagnon, who is a senior wealth advisor with Beacon Family Office at Asante Financial Management Limited. This is not an official program of Asante Financial Management, and the statements and opinions expressed during this podcast are not necessarily those of Asante Financial Management. This show is intended for general information only and may not apply to all listeners or investors. Please obtain professional financial advice or contact us at beaconfamilyoffice@asante.com or visit beaconfamilyoffice.com to discuss your particular circumstances prior to acting on the information presented.